He was certainly one of the better judges.
Did you know any of the justices in your travels? Did you have a chance to meet any of them? Like Cardozo or Leonard Louis Brandeis? And
They were a little before my time, just a little. But they were great. They're big books that thick on them.
I know it.
You can't even lift them.
Well, I must tell you that on my way out here, I'll leave this for you.
Oh, thank you.
On my way out here today, I had a chance, or yesterday, I live in Buffalo area. So Buffalo, and I traveled down, and I rode by a place, and it says Oswego. And my gosh, I thought of you in our upcoming interview when I saw Oswego.
Yes. What was it?
Well, I just saw a big sign that said Oswego, and of course you were there with the Fort Ontario. Was that sort of your defining moment, do you think, Dr. Gruber?
It certainly was leading into,
Right.
yes.
When you were working with Harold Ickes, what kind of guy was he, by the way?
Well, you know, he called himself an old curmudgeon. And before I went to meet him the first time, because I was supposed to do a series on Alaska, and the Herald Tribune said, "You've got to interview Ickes.
Right.
He's the Tsar of Alaska."
Right.
So I read up on him and knew he considered himself an old curmudgeon. But when I got to meet him, he didn't look like a curmudgeon to me. He looked like a country editor.
Right.
Sort of, not modest, but humane, warm. Nobody sort of looks warm. Hard for truth.
Mm-hmm.
The department before him was so corrupt.
Right.
He cleaned it up completely. Word got around, if you steal a stab, and he's the first one who integrated our dining room.
Right.
He said, we don't put blacks in one place and whites in the other. This is America.
Right.
So it was fun meeting him.
Right.
I began talking about Alaska, and his wife had said to him, "You must read this book I just found in the bookstore." And it was a book I'd written on the Soviet Arctic.
Mm-hmm.
So he did read a good part of it. That's the first thing he told me.
Right.
He said, "I found it very interesting, and we're trying out a few of the things you wrote about."
Right.
And we were talking, and I had noticed that all the people who were ushered into his domain by his secretary, his appointment secretary, stayed for 15 minutes. And I looked down at my watch surreptitiously. It's already half an hour.
Right.
And we were still talking about the Arctic and Alaska and how empty it was. And all of a sudden, he said to me, "Don't go there for the Herald Tribune, go for me." So I entered his office as a journalist, and I left as a bureaucrat.
When he made the proposal to you about going over to Italy,
Yes.
what was your first reaction?
Oh, I was thrilled,
Yeah.
because for so long I had been doing my best to see if we could open the doors to refugees.
Mm-hmm.
The war was on, but we could get some out. And nothing happened. We couldn't move Justice Department, couldn't move most of the government. Quotas were rigid, even in the war. Even single humanitarian. Everything was according to the that kind of law.
Mm-hmm.
And now the president suddenly opens our gates to 1,000. And it was such a wonderful thing because I could see it was the beginning. And maybe we could begin to save human lives instead of just shooting. So I was thrilled.
When you went over to Italy, as even the movie shows, and you saw that there were so many more than 1,000, well, that must have been heartbreaking.
It was. And though it was said to be 1,000, people didn't like one family. And they talked against them, so the men who were selecting them and following all the orders dropped them.
Right.
That was one reason it went down to 982 or something. But the figure 1,000 has a mystique about it.
Right.
So I continue to call it 1,000.
Yeah. Then when you bring them over to the United States, of course, what a voyage. That had to be so dramatic for you. I was reading a little bit about the tear-stained diary that you had
Yeah.
about that.
Because first they were very reluctant to talk.
Mm-hmm.
But then as we got to know each other better, they began to say, you have to talk, you have to tell my story.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was so tragic or so dramatic.
Right.
So they opened up. My notebooks got filled.
Did you have a hard time getting the press when you came across and arrived in New York to have the press believe it, to get the story out?
Well, the movie couldn't show all this, but as soon as we landed and I got home to my family in Brooklyn, I said goodbye to the refugees, and they said, you can't leave us now. I said, don't worry, I'll be right back with you, but I have to go home for one night and then I'll come back. So I called Icky saying, I'm back and I'll come back to Washington tomorrow. He said, no, don't come back. He said, the Army wants this kept top secret. But the press is so furious and shouting and screaming that they finally said, okay, you can have something in Hoboken where we crossed over. And he said, they've put some men up in the Empire State Building from, I guess it was the officer that was going to be in charge. And they don't know a thing about these people. The press is going to hold a press conference. So I want you to get up to the Empire State Building as soon as you can and help them out. So I got up there, and they were, typical government workers. And I said, you know what, I'll select some of the refugees whose stories I think the press would like most, and I'll type them up fast and use Xerox them. That was the way we worked in those days, not email. So I selected about 13, and I typed real fast and got them all on the Xerox, and we had a pile ready. And then I went back to the refugees, kept my promise to them, and then we crossed the river, and we came into Hoboken, and there was a table all set for us, and the press was already there, the Times, the Herald Tribune, and so on. I think there must have been about 10 members of the press, all with their hats with press. And the people kept by, and as they kept, I said, you come here. One of the ones whose stories I know they would love was not Jewish, but she saved a lot of people. And they caught her, and they put her in a cellar, and she had water dripping on her, and they wanted her to, to tell whom she had saved and how they could still grab them and kill them. And she wouldn't talk for 10 days, Matilda Nature. And when I called her, she said, I'm so scared, I don't know what to say. I said, Matilda, you don't have to worry. Your story and your face will be so wonderful for these reporters that they'll fall in love with you.
Yeah.
I'll translate for you. So of course she was a big hit. But the first one was the father of two men who were already pre-med students in Yugoslavia, Margulies. And he was head of B'nai B'rith, but he was also very political. And so I thought he'd be interesting. Well, he was such a bore. And he couldn't stop talking about some of the things he'd done. But they said, come on, mister, come on. Tell us what you went through. Did any of them try to kill you? Were you in a concentration? He went right on talking about whatever. Well, by this time, I'd gotten to know a few of the reporters. And they were getting very upset, so he yelled, shut up, you guys. Don't you see she's doing her best to help us? He was Speaker of the New York Times, and he became my guard, my protecting. If any of them got out of line, he'd scream at them.
No, good for him.
And so we got the story out at last.
Terrific. When the year ends in 1945, the war ends, was it hard to get the president to consider them to stay in the United States, to get the visas to stay? Because I know that was an issue as to whether when they were going to be there temporary and then sent back, or stayed in the United States.
Well, they signed a paper before they entered the ship going from Italy that they would return to their countries of origin as soon as the war was over. And they had now had 18 months in America. They had gone to school if they were school age. And we got teachers to come up to teach the elders some vocation so that when they got out, if they could stay, they would have jobs. And I was very careful to make sure they would get jobs, so they became beauty parlor operators, all kinds of jobs. And they wanted to stay by this time. And some of them had sons in our army who had come earlier and were already fighting and were at the front lines. So a whole group got together to try to keep them here. And Treasury and all the other departments were determined that they must keep the president's vow to Congress, and it was to get them in, get them past Congress, that he had opened the doors. And it was getting harder and harder. Somebody in the Justice Department sent him a long letter why he had to keep the promise that the president made. And he used to read this, and I read it, and I said, they sure don't know you, trying to tell a man like Hickey's you have to stick with the law.
Okay.
So if you said, you go up to New York, gather up leaders, Jews, non-Jews, bring them down here and come to my office and we'll decide where to go. So I went up to New York. This was all just around in December. Snow up there. Well, you're in the snow belt. I don't have to tell you what it's like. I brought down from Columbia, all over. And we got to Icky's office. And he said, don't wait. Yolanda, answer the phone, dear. And then you can bring it in. So, and this guy from the Times, Spiegel, was a real, kind of jumps up and down, and really was terrific. Whenever the guys got a little irritated, people like this Steffi Winters, she was a little old to go to high school.
Right.
She was about 20, but she convinced the principal that she wanted education.
Yeah.
And he let her go to high school, and they remained friends until he died.
Isn't that amazing?
Now she's in a place, in the movie, it opens with my visiting Louise Hertz,
Yeah.
the daughter of the house I lived, the family I lived with in Germany. And she's in the same place. So when we went to interview Louisa, we also interviewed her, Steffi. She was so upbeat and so, well, people had told me she wasn't well, but she was fine.
Yeah.
And they dropped the whole interview.
No kidding.
They dropped some wonderful interviews, but I had no power.
Let me turn this up here. There you go. When you do you get together at all with the old? There's your reunion of those survivors from Fort Ontario.
Oh, sure.
Is it sort of an annual get together, or?
Well, it's not that frequent.
Right.
And then they named the museum up there for me, so that was very rewarding.
Well, extremely well deserved. When you finished that project and the war ended in 1945, you found your way at some point in Nuremberg.
Well,
How did that happen?
there was a committee set up by President Truman and Ernest Bevin, England's foreign minister. Truman had heard that the survivors were pouring into camps, DP camps in Germany and Austria, and that some of them were so overcrowded, and some of them were, but the army was in charge. Some of the soldiers were not very nice to them. And so he sent a man from University in Philadelphia to find out just what was going on. And he came back with a harrowing tale.
Right.
He said some of them treat them the way the Nazis did, only they don't kill them. So he got hold of Bevan and said, this is awful what's happening. Why don't you open the doors of Palestine? These people have suffered so much, let them in. He couldn't say, I can't do that, I won't do it.
Yeah.
They needed all the help we could give them. So he said, let's have a committee. Very often a committee does good. Sometimes it's used to prevent any action.
Right.
He said, we could have an Anglo-American Committee of Inquiry on Palestine. And you have 6 people you will propose. I'll have 6 people, he said. And they can go all over Europe and find out what's going on. And Truman said, well, how will that open? He said, well, if they have a unanimous vote, we'll open the doors.
Mm-hmm.
If they vote that they think the doors to Palestine should be open. And it was one of the things that was going on
Right.
when my phone rang in the office. And it was Ted Thackeray, the editor-in-chief of the New York Post, whose wife was the daughter of Schiff. Anyway, he was powerful as editors-in-chief are, and the Post was a good paper.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I want you to go over, be attached to the committee, and send reports to us. And I thought, what a marvelous assignment.
Right.
With the war over now and then to travel. So I made an appointment to see the boss, told him what Thackeray wanted. And he said, I'm going to be leaving very soon. And while I'm here, I need you. I was answering hundreds of letters from GIs who wanted to know, how to homestead. Because at the end of the war, they felt better about Alaska.
Right.
Began to think of homesteading. So he said, and he told me that one of the oil men had come to him and said, I'd like to do offshore drilling on the Pacific coast. I said, absolutely not. Ickes was in charge of petroleum.
Mm-hmm.
Ickes said, no oil drilling, you'd kill the coast. Could have accidents. Nobody dreamed of an accident like this one in the Gulf of Mexico. But he could see them wrecking the whole coast. People had built homes right on. He said, absolutely not. So Paulie said, I'll give a big contribution to the Democratic Party. He said, you tried to bribe me, get out of my office. So he said, Truman and I don't agree, and I'll be leaving soon, I think. And as long as I'm here, I need you. I was writing speeches for him, doing all the things a special assistant has to do.
Yeah.
So I called Thackeray back and said, the boss says no. The next day, Ickes called me to his office and said, read this. And Thackeray wrote the kind of letter that an editor-in-chief writes. You've got to let her go. He said, I was wrong. You owe it to your people. You must go. And Thackeray said, she knows how to handle refugees, and she knows the workings of Washington. She can be of great help to American members of this committee. He said, you must go. So that's how I got to go and to be there right after the war, and that started a whole new path.
So did you actually spend some time at the trial itself at Nuremberg? Was that?
No, but my assignment was to stay with the subcommittee that was headed by Bartley Crump.
Right.
And I found my brother there. The Army said anybody who's on the front line is home by now.
Right.
But my brother, who was a dentist, but he was treated as a doctor,
Right.
was still in Germany. So we found him, and one day was for the Nuremberg trial.
No kidding.
I sat there between these two men, Bartley Gruber, my brother, writhing with anger. There they were. We were in the front line, and they came in Goering in a beautiful uniform. I learned later it was pressed from every single morning. Of course, all the medals were taken off.
Right.
And all the others. And it was so horrible. There was such arrogance. Goering acted as if he had won the war. And all the others were sitting there. Some looked a bit humble. Of course, most of them were hanged later. But we listened to testimony. And I was getting more and more anger. These men had killed millions, and now they were acting as if they were heroes of the war. Then they took us back and showed us how they lived. Each one had it was really a room, but it had a cage, and a soldier standing in front of it. It had everything, a bed, sink, toilet. They had their own library, 800 books. And I had just come from DP camps where those people who had suffered the most had no rooms. They were sleeping on the same tiers of bunks, straw. The ones who burned, gassed, shot, slept on. And the feel of it was still in those camps. So they were treated very humanely. And then they took us to see a movie. The army had done its own movie of what was going on in Europe and what these refugees were doing. And it was the first time that anybody had done that. Our army had done it.
Right.
So we saw that. So it was a very exciting day, what was happening in Nuremberg.
Was the city in rubbles? Do you remember the condition of the city?
Well, nearly every city was.
Yeah.
Munich was practically destroyed. Nuremberg, certain things were left untouched.
Right.
Like in Cologne, the dome wasn't touched. Cathedral. Most of the city destroyed, but the cathedral was untouched. It seemed the army knew exactly which things needed to be saved.
When you walked out of that day looking at the Nuremberg defendants, did you feel revulsion?
Oh, I hate the killings, but if I had a gun, I said to Brother Irving and to Bartley, if I had a gun, I would shoot them.
Yeah.
Of course I wouldn't, but
yeah.
I was so revolted by their arrogance.
Mm-hmm.
They lost the war, but they just sat there listening,
I'm going to ask a question which is unrelated here for a second, but you mentioned Cologne. And of course, having read your book ahead of time, which was a terrific book, congratulations.
Thank you.
If I may have missed it, but of course you had that relationship with Johann. Whatever happened to him?
Well, he became a Nazi.
Right, became a Nazi, and then did you follow him after?
No.
No?
No, I felt betrayed.
Yeah.
He said he had to. When I went back the next year with Unscop, I sent him a letter from London saying I will be in Cologne on Tuesday, 3 o'clock. I'll be staying at the Kerner Dome Hotel. If you want to see me, you can come. I figured if he were a Nazi, he wouldn't come. But if he was still a civilian, I would like to see him again, because we hadn't ridden all during the war. And he came in civilian clothes, so I felt great relief. And then after a while he said, well, you know, I had to become a Nazi because the only way I could get a job was by joining the party. I had to have a job because I had to support my mother. And I felt there are other jobs.
Sure.
He was brilliant. He could have got many other jobs. So I said, well, thank you for coming. And then he wrote a letter to my father asking him to please tell me how much he cared for me, but I wanted no part of it.
So that's the last?
That was the last.
You ever been curious about whatever happened to him?
No.
Yeah?
What happened to all the Nazis?
Right, yeah.
They survived.
Yeah, interesting. Again, changing subjects, if I could.
Why do you need this?
Pardon?
Why do you need this?
Oh, yeah, for the Jackson Center, Nuremberg, and Ruth Gruber. I just think it's great in the story. Last night I had a chance to meet with a lady whose father was involved with the Exodus. And she gave me his picture. And I'm going to show this to you. And his name was Yehuda Arazi. And he was one of the individuals very much involved in trying to assist the refugees, and was in the book and portrayed by in the book Exodus by Leon Uris as Ari Ben Kanan, you know, Paul Newman's character in the movie. And this is Yehuda Arazi. Well, anyways, I met with his daughter last night, and it was just a delight to kind of get the story, because I know you covered the story of the Exodus from very many angles. And so, I guess one question is, does the name Yehuda Arazi, or Arazi, it's spelled in the back, I may have it pronounced incorrectly, A-R-A-Z-I, but I'm just curious whether that name or that person's name meant anything to you.
At the moment it doesn't.
Yeah.
The face looks very familiar.
Yeah.
And his daughter, was it?
He's in New York City today.
Where does she live?
She's from Israel. She's from Jerusalem.
Yeah.
And her husband is a former Supreme Court Justice of Israel named Gabriel Bach. And Justice Bach prosecuted Adolf Eichmann.
Right.
So it's that relationship that I spent time with both of them last night. And then to meet with you, this has just been a real bonus for me.
Well, I'm delighted. But he certainly looks familiar.
Yeah.
But there were such a variety of people. Those who were eager to tell their stories, those who were reluctant.
Right.
And he looks very familiar.
Yeah, and he didn't tell his story. I mean, I'm not even sure. It took a long time before the daughter actually understood all that her dad did, because he did it secretly. He was an arms runner. He gathered up for the David Ben-Gurion's government to be in the early 40s, and then prior to the creation of the State of Israel.
Was he one of the refugees?
Well, no, he was, as you know, because you would know better than me, but David Ben-Gurion had this sort of shadow government he was creating, hoping the day would arrive when Israel would become a state. And Yehuda Arazi was, if there was a CIA in David Ben-Gurion's group, Yehuda would have headed it. Whatever the name was, I'm a little bit of a loss.
Oh, he was not on the Exodus. He was not one of those.
Well, he was planted there. He was planted there to be with the refugees. He was one of the
I know who he was. He came here, and he looked through all my paperbacks. He loved reading mysteries.
Yeah.
And I gave him a bunch. I said, take whatever you want.
Yeah.
And I didn't remember Arazi, but it was something similar.
Yeah.
I didn't know that it was spelled that way.
Yeah.
I think they changed it a little bit.
Probably did. For lots of reasons, they probably changed it.
Yes, yes. Now I know exactly who he was.
Well, his daughter's in town, so I met her last night. I told her I was going to meet you, and that your involvement with the whole Exodus story, and she was so thrilled, and she just wanted to say hello and send her best as well.
Good, good. Oh, I know him very well. He was short and had a lot of power.
Right. Yep.
He was close to Ben-Gurion.
That's right. That's right.
And he is special. Yeah, he was one of the heads of their intelligence.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's the guy.
Oh, I thought you meant he was one of the Oswego refugees.
No. He was he was the Exodus.
Yeah.
You've done so much in your life. What's your highlight as you sit here today overlooking this magnificent view of Central Park? I'm in awe. You should kind of sit here today and say, well, I've done a lot, but maybe the couple things that were highlights for Dr. Ruth Gruber, certainly the youngest person to get a doctorate, age 20.
It was just by chance.
Yeah.
And just good luck that I should happen to be in Cologne when they gave me the fellowship, the Institute of International Education, to go to Germany. And I had applied for it when I was in Wisconsin getting my master's, because there was so much I loved about Germany. I loved Beethoven and Bach and Goethe, Rainer Maria Rilke, that I applied to go to Germany. Of course, my family was hysterical.
Right.
My mother couldn't believe I would go to Germany. Hitler was not yet in power, but he was in the papers every day, and they were reading what he was doing. My mother was sure he would kill me.
After you received your doctorate, you had a chance to meet Konrad Adenauer.
Wasn't that lovely?
Yeah, and I'm sure little realized that he'd be such an important person
Right.
afterwards. Did you stay in correspondence with him at all?
No.
No. He was as the mayor of Cologne, and then of course became, after the war, a significant individual in Germany.
But he blessed me,
Yes.
and he gave me 2 beautiful art books on Cologne. And he looked on me as, my child.
Right.
He was such a fatherly man.
Mm-hmm. Well, your paths cross so much, and then I must get your reaction. You mentioned in your book about actually going to a rally where Hitler came. What was that like? What did you get in the moment, the emotion? What was your reflection on that?
Well, I announced to Papa Hertz and Mama Hertz at dinner time that I was going to go across the Rhine, that Hitler was speaking in one of their big, huge marketplaces, and they became as hysterical as my mother did that I was going to Germany. And they said, you can't go to that. You're a naive young American. You don't know what they can do to you. They can kill you. said, they won't kill me. I'll pretend I'm an ordinary citizen of Germany, of Cologne. At that time, I could even speak Kirsch. So they couldn't stop me, of course, any more than my mother and father.
I like your independence.
To this day,
Yeah.
there are always people who are trying to, mother me. And I say, thank you, Mike. So I left and I got there by myself. And I was ushered, to where just civilians would sit. And it was just close to the podium. Here was the high podium, and here were the seats for us. And I sat down, making myself as inconspicuous as possible, and took the American flag off my lapel and waited, and the place filled up with SS men carrying swastikas, wearing swastikas. Hundreds poured in. It was a huge place there. And they were singing all the Nazi songs. And it was getting more and more scary. And then Hitler arrived. At first, it was everybody waving the flags. He came with a whole entourage. And gets up to the podium. And then there's silence. And he begins speaking in that voice. To this day, I can hear it. It didn't come from the vocal cords. It came from his bowels. And he kept using dirty words. One of them, in German though, was a four-letter word. Begins with S and ends with T. On America. And on Jews. And whatever else he was saying, that was the theme. And he kept saying it. My heart was thumping so, listening to this. I thought of an SS man. But nobody heard it. They couldn't have cared less. And so I waited till he had left, and I left. Got home, and Papa and Mama Hertz had waited up for me. And they were greatly relieved, but then they wanted to know exactly what happened, what he said. When I told them, they were shocked. But they said, don't believe it. In a year, he'll be out. Nobody, the Germans are too smart to believe this. How wrong those people were.
Were you surprised? And this was like in 1932 when you listened to this. I don't think he'd been president yet. He wasn't elected.
He wasn't. Came in 33.
So, as you watch this progress, and clearly from the Department of Interior's perspective, are you shocked by his rise? Or was that something you could foresee even then, that he had
Yes, because I had seen some of the students who were already Nazis.
Right.
And they were instigating fights all the time, especially with the socialists and the communists and the nationalists. And they were a pretty terrifying group. They all looked kind of angry all the time.
Did you fear for yourself being at Cologne? They knew you were Jewish. Being an American, being Jewish, did you fear that sort of personal thing for yourself?
The only time I feared it was when Hitler talked. And because it was so rancorous and so filthy, and it wasn't a positive thing either.
And you could see the results when you came back in '35 to see what change had happened.
Oh, it's a different country.
Yeah. Wow. You're amazing. You're an amazing individual, Dr. Gruber.
Oh, you're very kind.
Oh, you've done so much. If I could fast forward a little bit to the Exodus time period, as you were covering that from various angles and going from port to port to port to try to intercept the ship and to ultimately be part of the running meet, when you got done, did you feel like you were able to make a difference in any of the policy that ultimately did lead to the opening of Palestine? Did you feel like your reporting had an impact?
Well, I was so lucky that Bartley Crumb and the other Americans trusted me, kept me always in touch, knowing what they were doing. Right. I wasn't allowed to sit, when they had their secret meetings. But then when they came out, they would tell me how much I could reveal. And the articles were getting a lot of notice. And when I came back, Post asked me to do a series, and then they ran a big thing across every bus. Palestine is the Ireland of 1921. They took headlines from the articles and put them on buses, and I thought that was fun.
Yeah. With your byline?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
All I remember is the article, the title. I don't think they had a byline. Maybe, but I don't know.
I guess I can't conclude this interview without at least asking what I'm sure other people have asked. You had a chance to meet Virginia Woolf.
Yes.
And most people have never really had that chance. So what was she like?
She was beautiful and elegant. The movie did her no justice. It made her look very ordinary, household, dresses. All morning, I marched up and down in front of their house, thinking of the questions I could ask her. I didn't ask her a thing. I was in such awe. I had fallen in love with her writing. So when I finally arrived promptly at 6, I went up, and the house was so much like my house in Brooklyn. There was a gate, and rang a bell. Somebody came to the gate, and they led you upstairs, and there was a door, and a man came out and said, "Welcome, I'm Leonard." Took me in. It was a big living room, paintings all around, and there at the end of the room was a fireplace, and this beautiful woman lay right in front of the fireplace in a long gray silk gown, gray shoes, gray stockings, gray hair, and a silver cigarette holder with a cigarette. And he brought me to a chair, arms just like this, and she lay this far away, even closer. And I sat there, and I couldn't open my mouth.
Yeah.
And she said, "I read your book or pamphlet or something. It was very academic. I didn't know what that was supposed to mean. But I looked down and I said to myself, is something wrong with this picture? I came expecting to sit at her feet. Now she's lying at my feet and puffing away, constantly puffing. I think if she hadn't committed suicide, she'd have died of all that smoking.
Oh, yeah.
Never stopped. Every cigarette was lit up, but the previous one. And she'd have long pauses, and nobody would say anything. And she said she thought I was German, because I had written her once from Cologne. And she kept talking about my country, and I didn't want to, tell her, you're mistaken, I'm not German. Because if she couldn't detect it from my voice, my accent, what difference did it make? I was not going to correct Virginia Woolf. And I was really impressed with her. She said we were on vacation and we were stopped by Hitler and his entourage. It was really Himmler who cared.
Yeah, yeah.
And the conversation, it was not momentous in any way, but it didn't matter. I was sitting and watching Virginia Woolf. And half an hour I thought, I've taken enough of her time. And I got up and left.
What do you want people to remember about you? You know, Dr. Ruth Gruber, you've done so much over a lifespan of almost 100 years. What's
99.
99? Unbelievable. And you look so great, I'm telling you, I can't believe it. Is there something you'd like them to kind of remember you by?
That I always seek the truth. It doesn't matter whether it's positive or not. It has to be the truth.
What a great statement. What a great statement. And you're a great person. And I can't thank you enough. And if I could, I got a couple things I'd love to have you autograph.
What?
So I got just a picture here of you and the book I brought along. Maybe I could just probably right over here someplace where there's an open spot.
I better have Yolanda. Yolanda, would you give me my glasses, my eyeglasses?
This was off the internet. They had an article about you.
Where was this?
This was on when I Googled Ruth Gruber. There you came up.
Wow.
Would you like some water?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Okay.
We'll be leaving here soon because I know she's busy, but I think we can.
And this came up?
Yeah.
When?
Well, there's a lot of good things about you on the internet.
Somebody told me it's all been dropped. My handwriting is awful now. Used to be good. Jewish Virtual Library. All this is on me.
So when you type in Ruth Gruber, you're everywhere. You're a star, a rock star.
Somebody called me. There was an article in the forward. The 50, I don't know, something or other women, most important women in the country. She said, maybe they meant in the world. I said, go on. Where do you want me to autograph?
Just, oops, I'll get you. If you want to just sign your right there, that'd be great. Perfect. And I got one more thing to ask. If you could sign, I'll trade you.
Boy, where did you find this?
Yeah, we found that in the library, and they let me have it, and so because they knew I was coming to see you.
This is the first edition. It's beautiful, isn't it? Right here?
That'd be great. Well, I have taken up a lot of your time today, but this has been a real highlight for me.
Well, I'm delighted to meet you.
Well, I'm delighted to meet you. And I'll leave my business card,
Yes.
just so you know who this guy was that showed up today. I'm a lawyer out of Buffalo, and also the president of the Robert Jackson Center.
That's great. Now, what does that center do?
Well, we are there to advance the Justice Jackson, who was both a Supreme Court justice and, of course, was the chief prosecutor at Nuremberg, which is what you were at that one day.
Yes.
And so he was the guy who really orchestrated that whole trial, and we have been doing an awful lot in preserving the legacy of the trial.
What, for instance?
For example, the evidence that was at the trial, which, when you read the evidence, there's no question that the Holocaust existed. The Holocaust deniers can't even get started in their conversation, not being confronted with the evidence that was at the trial. And you saw some of that. So once you read the evidence that was available, German evidence, it's so clear. And that's part of it. Also, making sure that that which happened in Nuremberg continues today in Rwanda, Cambodia, Sierra Leone, the International Criminal Court. So that has all part of the Jackson Center's legacy. And you covered it. And as it turned out, the Eichmann trial, this is where it all fits together. The Eichmann trial was directly related to the Nuremberg trial. And Gabriel Bach was here as a prosecutor. And who would have guessed his wife was the daughter of Yehuda Arazi, who you met later on in life. And so it all comes together. It's just...
What do they do?
What do the Bachs do?
Yeah.
Well, Gabriel now is in the States for a week. He's talking at Toro University, in the Toro Law School, regarding...
Where is that?
It's near Staten Island. And so there he's there for a week talking about the Eichmann trial, talking about some of the legal ramifications of that trial today.
Gabriel
Bach.
Bach, the
B-A-C-H.
Supreme Court judge from Israel.
And he's in his early 80s, and his wife is about the same age. So it was a delight to have dinner with them last night.
Yeah, wonderful.
So it all comes together. It's just wonderful. May I take a photo of you?
Well,
Oh, we've taken a lot of these too, but I can't still photo. Do you